Let's talk about this with Jennifer Powers, who's founder and director of Unplugged Coalition. They're a campaign group which is aimed at reclaiming childhood from addictive technology. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. So would you be in favour of a social media ban for under 16-year-olds?
I'm definitely in favor of restricting children's access to harmful social media platforms, absolutely, and also really keen that parents delay giving their children smartphones for as long as possible.
But what about a ban?
Yeah, I think the Australia model is a really interesting one, and it's not as much of a ban as you might think. It's actually a ban on the platforms, not on the children.
Yeah.
So it says to the platforms, you are not allowed to give accounts to under 16s. And in Australia, they've grouped, I think it's 8 platforms together within that definition. One of the benefits of Australia going first is that we've been able to learn a little bit already about how that's working. And I think we're coming up with more of a refined approach here in the UK. So as you said, we don't know what, if anything, the government will choose to do. But what they have spoken about in the House of Commons after being pushed really hard by the opposition parties is to actually restrict addictive by design features for under 16s, which would mean, again, the onus is on the platform, not on the child.
One of the things that happened in Australia was that kids already had these social media accounts. They weren't closed down. They just carried on. You just can't, it's harder for them to open them.
They were supposed to be closed down,
but
that
they
was
didn't.
The tech companies not wanting to do it because, of course, they want eyeballs on the internet. They want to get our kids on.
They make money from us. If it's free, it's because you're actually the product rather than the customer. But this thing, I would like the addictive by design aspects of social media to be gone for me as an adult too. Now,
well, that I don't see that happening, although that would be an option. I think the brilliance of this idea that campaigners here in the UK have come up with is that if you create, it's just 8 social media companies like they have in Australia, then very quickly a 9th is going to pop up and all the children are just going to go there, right? So it's much better, rather than doing it on a brand basis, to do it on a features basis. So what this could mean a ban by the back door, in the sense that if however many social media platforms there are that have these addictive by design features, if they chose not to disable those features because they wanted 17-year-olds to 77-year-olds to still be on the platform, then at their choice, they would have to institute age assurance mechanisms. And that would create a sort of default ban on under 16s accessing the platforms. But let's be honest, this isn't the full solution, okay? I think this is a modest, reasonable, and timely intervention that the government has been pulled kicking and screaming to take some action on.
Okay.
It's not going to solve everything.
It's not going to solve everything because parents are still going to give their phones. I mean, there is also the issue, anything that basically identifies who children are on the internet, by definition, unless it's, the parents doing that, you also then need to identify adults. And once adults are identified, then you no longer have anonymity. And to say social media...
Not quite true. I'm going to push back on that. Well, there are some people who, I don't know, they like to be these free speech absolutists. And so they kind of put their cape on.
I'm not a free speech absolutist.
No, I'm not claiming you. I've been in debates with others who say, oh, this is awful, this is going to be age gating. I said, look, there is the technology out there to do double blind age verification. So basically, there's a couple of steps in between, and the platform never knows your name, your age, your birth date, anything about you, but it is verified that you're of a certain age. That is one option. Okay, there's a whole range.
That is more acceptable to me. However, I wouldn't trust that in, say, totalitarian countries where there is more restriction.
Sure.
But but that is a very big issue in terms of people's freedom. And I'm not a free speech absolutist.
I'm just saying there are
There
solutions.
are ways, again, but I have a funny feeling that most totalitarian governments can get around that. But here's the thing. How much of this, though, is something that the government should do? How much of this is what responsible companies can do? I mean, we know a lot of these companies that, that push the Facebook and the X and everything, and they all pretend they're either about free speech or be nice to everyone, freedom and exchange of ideas. No, they're just money-making machines, and that's what they're doing, and our children are the product. But
and I have no problem.
Let me finish, Jennifer.
Go ahead.
But how much of this is actually just bloody awful parenting?
Okay. Listen, I, in some ways, don't blame the tech companies because they're acting very rationally, and the politicians and the regulators have not been willing to regulate them sufficiently
Mm.
to make them remove harmful content or to keep our children off. So, my view is, as a society, we need to come together and demand more of our government, of our political elite, and say, this is ridiculous. They're taking the mickey. They've taken a generation of children and they've been sacrificed on the altar of addictive by design and features and content, and it's just not good enough. And so, do I think there's a role for parents? Absolutely. I give talks a couple times a week to groups of parents in schools all over the country. And I tell them, listen, if these things happen to your kids in real life, you would not let them go back to
No.
Amelia's house or Billy's house, right?
Yeah.
If they came home with bruises or they were crying or they'd been shown hardcore pornography, you wouldn't let them go back to that person's house. Why on earth,
Yeah.
when that happens online, do you still let them have a smartphone? Do you still let them take their smartphone to bed with them at night? Are you still letting an 8-year-old on Snap or an 11-year-old on TikTok? So absolutely there's a role for parents. But also I'm ambitious for all kids, and we do draw lines in society. I believe in strong borders, whether that's our national borders, whether it's, respect for the police. There are sometimes in society where we come together and we go, no, actually, we're going to draw a line in the sand here. It is not okay for these big tech platforms to come in and steal our kids' childhood. And so for me, putting that as a marker in the sand and saying, no, you know what? You can sell what you want to, the mums on TikTok or Insta or anything like that. But our kids are off limits. And will it be perfect? No.
No. Yeah.
But
They
will it
never are.
be a really strong message that says our kids are not for sale in this country? You're not allowed. And over time, in 5 or 10 years, we will live in a very different country where children are raised to understand they should not be on smartphones and they should not be on social media platforms.
Really good to talk to you, Jennifer. Jennifer Powers, founder and director of Unplugged Coalition. Thank you very much indeed.